So we're ready to get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name's Shane Snow. I am an alum of the class of 2010, and I'm really excited to be here today to interview Walt Mossberg and Kara Swisher. A little bit about my background is after J School, I started writing about technology, so I write for Wired magazine and for Fast Company and freelance for various other places. And I started a tech company in late 2010 called Contently, and raised venture capital and did a lot of the things that these two have done recently with their latest website. And so I'm attempting to commit journalism at the same time as build a business, and it's both of those things are very tricky. So that's my background. I was here last year speaking at this event as well. But before we start the Q&A, I'm told to have Walt and Kara introduce themselves rather than me introduce them. So we'll start with the woman with the best glasses in the room.
I'm wearing them to bother my mother right now. I wore them on CNBC this morning, and she wrote me immediately, "You look terrible." So I wear them to irritate people on Twitter, too. I am Kara Swisher. Do you want me to introduce Walt?
You could introduce each other. That actually could be great.
Well, Walt Mossberg is the best husband I've had for so many years. We've been partners for 14 years, like that. And we've had very few differences and a lot of success. He is obviously a graduate of the Columbia School of Broadcasting here. I joke. He's a graduate of this school and also a proud Rhode Islander. And he is I think possibly the most important tech reviewer of the past several years. He started at, I'm blanking, Walt, I forget where you started. Where did you start? Providence in Rhode Island. Providence Journal, but later went on to fame at the Journal. He covered the Defense Department, he covered the State Department, he covered auto industry, but his interest in gadgets got him to abandon what was considered in Washington a really promising career to write about gadgets. So much so that a lot of people thought the Secretary of State, James Baker, thought he had been demoted when he started his personal technology column in what's the year?
1991.
1991, which was very early in the game of the digital revolution. And the first line of his first column, I think, is still pertinent today and was very famous. Technology is too hard to use and it's not your fault, which I think is completely true today. And he has since sort of pioneered how to write about tech, to review tech in a very different way. It was always done by geeks and wonks, and Walt changed that and made it very conversational, aimed at consumers, aimed at being fair and doing really strict reporting on the things that he was writing about. And a lot of people either took freebies and did sort of in the tank cheerleading things, or else got super geeky, and he did not do this. And he became, things have changed. There's so many more tech reviewers now, but Walt really was the arbiter of what people liked and didn't like, and has had a huge following since then. And has morphed his career several times. That was the first time I think he was an entrepreneur. And then we left the Journal to start All Things D together, and he changed his career again, where we started a conference business inside the Wall Street Journal. It was very successful, and then later a website. And in the beginning of 2014, we left News Corp, and it moved to our own company called Revere Digital. It's named after Revere because it's freedom from Rupert Murdoch. And
that's really
true. 100% true. And so we started that since. So Walt is on his third startup, really, in a lot of ways, all successful. And he's been a great partner, as I said, over the many years. And he also walked me down the aisle at my wedding, which was another thing. So we've had a really great partnership over the years.
So that was much blabbier than you usually are,
well,
I just say.
You deserve it.
So I would say that we are now living through the Kara Swisher moment in technology, and it's well-deserved, and it's a great moment. This is probably the best natural reporter I've ever worked with, covering anything. And I speak as somebody who, yes, it's true, I've been a reviewer and a columnist for a long time, but I did spend 20 years as a beat reporter at the Wall Street Journal in Washington, competing with the New York Times and the Washington Post, and a lot of fantastic journalists. Some may even be in this room, but I've never been anybody as good at being a natural reporter as Kara. And by that, I mean she gets great scoops, and she does really thoughtful analysis. She's funny in her writing, but here's the thing. She always adheres to really high standards, and this is one of the parts of our collaboration and partnership that has made it successful, I think, is that we've both been open to change and to the new things you can do online, but we have always insisted at allthingsd.com, which we were running inside the Wall Street Journal, and our conferences, which we, by the way, we consider journalism, and if you're interested, I can talk about that. But now also at Recode.net and still at our conferences, which are called the Code conferences, we've always insisted on the kind of sourcing and ethical standards that you see in the very finest traditional publications. And so she goes about her business being feared, and I'm not making this up, I mean, she's feared in Silicon Valley, and yet highly respected, because everybody knows that she's not on the take, that if she reports something, it's 99.9% certain that it's going to turn out the way just as she said.
100, but okay.
Did I mention she's snarky? She's snarky. And we, you know, I would say that she also has a very good head for business, although that was not anything taught in either the class of '85 or certainly the class of '70 here. And she just, she never sleeps. That's another important thing. I think another important thing is that she's a very good mother to two sons who are now, what, 12 and Alex?
They're 12 and 13 and 10. 13 and
10. I did walk her down the aisle at her first of many weddings to the same person. It just, where could they find it would be legal at that moment? And the one I walked you down at the aisle for was beautiful, but totally not legal.
No, not legal. All right, enough, Mossberg.
She's a terrific partner.
All right. Well, I was going to say, and class of '85 and class of '70, let's leave a hand. So I'm really glad that you introduced each other.
Isn't that a good idea by us for you?
What's that?
We're teaching you how to do conferences right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So
think of it as a workshop.
We're going to talk for 30 or so minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
Sure.
And then there's a big reveal of an award that's already been announced that you guys have won, Columbia Innovation Award, which is an awesome deal. And so before I get to the questions about that and about Recode, the first thing I wanted to ask you is you two are this sort of inseparable duo, sort of like the Milo and Otis of journalism.
Wow. Thanks.
What do you disagree on?
Oh, that's interesting. Gosh, that's in Milo and Otis. Okay. There's other.
Who's
like,
Milo? Who's Otis?
There's other fantastic pairs, but I would say, what do we disagree on? I think it just probably tonality. I'm a little quicker to make decisions, and I'm more hair trigger in terms of instinct. And Walt likes to consider everything. We had a disagreement with the car today, just because I think he worries too much, and I'm like, let's just drive through. And I think what's really good is that we get to. It's good to have different qualities when you're in a business partnership or a journalism partnership, because that it brings forth the other parts and it helps you. So it's been a strength, that difference. Though it's probably the only time we ever really have a disagreement is I really want to rush into things and am typically correct. But Walt is very much more considered, and I think it's just a good mix like that. I would say.
I do not wear sunglasses indoors. That's one of the big differences,
yes,
I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned in starting a business is that it's very tempting to start a band with 4 guitar players, especially if you're coming from journalism.
Right.
You get your journalism buddies to start a website or a publication, and one of the reasons a lot of startups started by journalist entrepreneurs fail is because of that lack of difference, and so that probably has a lot to do with why you guys have been
Well,
successful.
if I could just say something, we got to know each other because I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I remained based there, even though the Journal wanted me to move to Silicon Valley. And it has to do with me wanting a consumer perspective on my columns and worrying that I would become kind of part of the industry culture if I moved there. But Kara was working for the Washington Post, which had 2 tech journalists. Her job was the sexier one of the 2, in that she was really covering the very early days of online. I'm not going to quite say internet because it was AOL. And she was doing a book, and we'd met briefly before that, but our really first getting to know each other was that she was interviewing me for the book, because I had written some stuff about AOL that they regarded as important in the development of the thing. And I recruited her, and so she had this book lead, but she really wanted to do tech reporting, and I recruited her to go to the Wall Street Journal instead of back to the Post. And but then when you talk about the band thing, that was the basis of our getting to know each other. We were not like in school together, obviously, looking at these signs, and we also would wind up going to the same tech conferences, realizing they sucked. And I'm now talking about everyone that came before us, arrogantly, and realizing we could do a better job.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
Yeah, we went to a lot of these things, and they were really, we started with the conference. We wanted to start with a blog, really, but the Journal was,
not ready.
Was still like chipping stones and putting things out in stone tablets. So I remember telling Karen, it's Karen, right? We want to do a blog, and she's like, blog, what's that? Like, I was like, it's going to be really big. I have this feeling. But they wouldn't let us do that, even though it was a de minimis amount of money. And so we started with the conference because it was something that could be immediately profitable. They were sort of sucking wind elsewhere in the business. And so we did the conference first, which something we were familiar with because tech loves to have conferences. But they are all really 2 things. Either they're super dull, like egregiously, aggressively dull, or they're in and the reason they're dull is what they do is they let sponsors put speakers on stage. They do these endless panels. Nothing comes out of them. The food's bad, like everything. And so we were like, we could do this better. And there was one conference called Agenda that we thought was pretty good comparatively.
That was the best.
That was the best, and it sort of was ending. The original person had left, and we saw a real space for that because we felt we had a lot of expertise and could convene people. I think it's the ability to convene people. And so when we started All Things D, when the conference, we wanted to make it so it had enormous splash from the very beginning. And one of the things Walt told me when I came to the Journal, when he gave me this advice, was you have to parachute in with cleats on. I think that was correct, which was really a violent imagery. But that was the idea that we're going to hit big. And so when we started All Things D, we started off with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Like, not that particular, not the joint interview. The joint interview. But we were always trying to stuff like that. So we were always trying to sort of make it a wow, make it sexier, make it more interesting, and then do interviews on stage that are really hard-hitting.
Yeah, we sort of decided that, reporters aren't good for much, as most of you know, but they ought to be able to do a good interview. And a lot of these tech conferences, the interviews are being conducted by venture capitalists and Wall Street analysts who didn't know how to ask follow-up questions or ask tough questions. And so we figured we could be, our whole premise and the way we sold it to the Journal was, we're going to do a journalistic interview, but on stage, and invite all our competitors, which we did and still do, they said, reluctantly, they said, okay, the business side, but we'd like you to do it through our conference department. They had a conference department that no one had heard of, because their conferences had no impact. And we said, no, this is a journalistic product. We're doing it through the news staff, which the managing editor at the time, Paul Steiger, agreed on. And so it was always a news product. And we actually now call it live journalism. And we've tried to extend that to the way our website runs and to the fact that we have an operating agreement with NBC, so we do television. Everything is kind of live journalism.
Yeah, and the concept was the journalists run it, that rather than, there's all sorts of, always ethical in terms of everything you do, but the idea was, what if you could watch a Wall Street Journal reporter interview someone? live. And one of the things we did is we kept it open. We broadcast it immediately. We put video out on the internet. We invited competitors to cover it. We did a lot of things so that it became a news event. And if we could get news to happen on stage, which we frequently do, either by the fact that it's Bill Gates and Steve Jobs together and anything they say together is, it was just a great historic meeting, or something that's super interesting. Like this year, we're having Elizabeth Warren on stage, and it's perfect timing because the Comcast merger and stuff.
Well,
like
how
that.
is this for an opening night? And I'm not selling tickets because the tickets sold out in 3 hours months ago. But the opening night at our conference this year is Evan Spiegel, the head of Snapchat, and then Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
So everything is digital in our view. Technology has affected everything. And the people that the new rich who run the technology industry are interested in hearing from, and who come to our conference, are interested in hearing from all kinds of different people. We've had cancer researchers on stage. We had Kim Kardashian come and talk about how she has a very successful smartphone game.
And huge social following.
You know, we had the guy, when it was just starting and it was a big hit, we had the guy who created Modern Family come on and talk about how he uses digital to promote his television show. And of course, the heads of all the tech companies and media companies.
So this is something that, as an innovation writer, I get annoyed at, is when Taco Bell announces a new Crunch Wrap and they say it's innovative, right? That this is innovation, that we now have a different seasoning.
It might be.
Well, so.
Why not?
Well,
Why
what does
would
that mean?
go,
In the field of making tacos, maybe that is
innovative.
I mean, innovation is about reinvention. It's about reimagining. It actually speaks to the title or the name of your new.
I thought the Frito chimichanga was genius.
How about the Dorito? I actually thought the Dorito taco
I totally
was.
wanted to buy one.
All right, so
I'm not so high on the double Burger King burger, you know, just like on a wide roll.
Stays whole. Remember that?
I think that's derivative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about while we're on the subject, the
along.
donut
All right,
with
move on.
the
Get your question.
Okay. So, you guys started just last year, a tech
2014.
website with a tech conference. When you were running a tech website with a tech conference before that, in an era when there are 1 million tech websites and 1 million tech conferences.
Right.
What is it about Recode that is innovative? Why are we giving you this award for innovation? What is the way?
We have no idea.
I don't know. No, I'll tell you.
The last part of that, we have no idea.
No, but you know, we started this 12 years ago. Like in 2000, nobody was doing what we were doing 12 years. Everyone's copying us now because they see the money Walt and Kara are making. They're like, let me get some.
How much money?
I'm not telling you. But I have a beautiful house in San Francisco.
Not all the money that we generated for Dow
exactly.
Jones.
We gave them plenty of money back. And so we started it very early on and changed the nature of, you know, I think probably the closest thing akin to us in terms of things that people just love to buy. We're a product. Like the conference is a product, would be the TED conference. You know, it gives them a great experience. It's a great and interesting event for people, and they really want to keep going back. And so we were just very quickly, so we were trying to, we changed the way conferences were done. We absolutely did. We changed the nature of tech conferences, at least, to make them interesting, newsworthy, entertaining. And
no one can show slides.
No one can show slides.
There's no podium. No one can speak from a prepared text, and we do not do panels. There's no 6-person panel where everyone gets 5 minutes.
He told Bill Gates he couldn't use PowerPoint, which was fantastic.
That's amazing.
But worse, more difficult was telling Steve Jobs he could not use the 50 slides he brought.
Right.
When 2 of his vice presidents were afraid to go backstage and tell him not to.
Right, exactly. So we were, and in the website thing, I think a lot of, look, newspapers have been super slow to get to the web, let's be clear. They're still super slow. We started this thing 7-8 years ago, something like that. Website, when there was only a lot of blogs that had questionable ethical issues, were in the tank for Silicon Valley, essentially. And so I think the way we innovated is we decided that if these people were getting this kind of traffic, doing a shoddy job, why couldn't we do something excellent and do it with a little bit more personality, as clear as personality on our site, do it with a little bit more voice, do it with like the way Walt writes, and do it with you know, sort of killer news instinct. And so we were creating this new site back 8 years ago. At the time, it was like, whoa, this is actually good. And in the tech field, now there was lots going on in all kinds of other fields just like us, but I think there was a point in that time frame that we were very new in that idea, and now everyone's doing it. Like, that's the thing.
But the big change between Recode and All Things D is that we have a slash
And
in
red.
our name.
Yeah, I was going to ask about
Yeah.
the slash, also the .net.
And it's a .net.
Yeah, I mean,
Now-
that's
You explain the slash.
unprecedented.
The .net is because there's a crazy German person who won't sell me .com, and he just refused. And I'm like, guess what? Now I'm making the net sexy. You know, .net
Okay.
is back. So we can
The
have a
slash
choice.
was because we saw we had an agency to design our site because we were able to raise some money, so we had some money, and we hired an agency to design our site, they're one of these companies that thinks up names, and they thought up a lot of terrible names. I think we looked at 300 names, but we wanted it to represent kind of the code part of it is obviously evocative of tech, and the part of it is rethinking, reimagining, reinventing, whatever, all those
which is
words.
the definition of innovation.
And they showed us that with and without a slash, and the one with the slash looked really good graphically, to be honest. It was a graphical thing. So
We also use the word re. We do reactions. We have a lot of stories. We use re a lot. And things.
we have a series on products called Reboxing. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a lot of people that post unboxing videos of these gadgets, like the new Apple Watch. There will be unboxing videos because Apple spends a lot of money on the packaging and the experience of opening it. We are now, this is a new thing for us, we've only done one or two, where we're going to take things we were
Don't
kind
like.
of disappointed by and box them up again. And that lets us say re/boxing.
We just want to do
We
that.
can use it a
Just
lot.
Keep going.
I like that.
Also, do you have something against punctuation? Is that an issue for you? Like, people get mad about our punctuation. It's interesting on Twitter. When we started, they were like, why are you using the slash? Like, indignant. I was like, screw you. If I want to use a slash, don't use a slash with your site. Like,
It's the internet, yeah.
It's really interesting. And then this new show, Scorpion, or one of them's copying it. If you notice, there's a logo on a new, I don't know if it's an NBC show. We should speak to them. But it has the same slash with the double.
And the lawsuit is pending. I
Yeah,
assume.
right. Yeah, with our enormous.
So you raised venture capital,
which
is-
No, we did not raise venture capital.
You
We
raised
raised money.
money
But
from.
we declined to take venture capital.
So explain the difference.
Would you like to know why?
Yes.
Okay, so the difference would require me to be a finance professor, which I'm not. But, I mean, I could explain it, but I think a lot of people here
Sure.
know it. Technology venture capital, or Silicon Valley venture capital, which is what most tech startups are funded by unless they self-fund. We're obviously very familiar with all of them. We talk to them as part of our reporting.
They offer us money all the time.
They offer us money. I mean, literally, when it became known what we were doing, one of the best-known venture capitalists, who I shouldn't use his name because I don't think it was a public conversation, said separately to her and to me about a week apart, just come by the office, I'll write you the whole check for what you want. Here's the thing. So many of the companies we cover are backed by these venture capitalists that we already have to put an asterisk in every time we mention Comcast because NBC News is a minority investor in our site. And that's fine, we knew that. Okay, it's one footnote. If we took money from any of the well-known VC firms that back the tech companies, they each back 52 tech companies that we write about, so it'd be more footnotes than stories. And we just thought it was too
different
conflicted.
having a media investor. They're a media
Right.
investor, and the other investor is a media investor. And so, people can,
Yeah, we have two investors, both media.
you can parse it out, but we felt media investors were better investors for us. They're more patient, they understand the business, and then we could also have the affiliation with NBC, which was trying to get more digitally savvy, and so
Right.
it's
Right,
a
there's
perfect.
credibility.
And then we get to be on TV. It works out a lot better. I don't think if we got money from Mark Andreessen,
Right.
except
Is
for.
that who it was?
No, not at all. No, are you
No.
kidding? He'd never give me a dime.
Yeah, no. So we raised money. We've raised 3 rounds of funding from the other kinds,
Yeah.
from VCs.
Yeah, but you're running
Right, we're running a software company.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. Raising money is hard. You have to paint this vision of how you're going to take over the world.
It's not that hard. I went to lunch
No,
the
it
other
wasn't-
day.
we didn't
I
have
went to
that
lunch
much
the other day
trouble.
at a venture capitalist. I thought we were talking about his investments in Snapchat and some other things, and he said, I'd like to give you $25 million. And I was like, oh, all
Well, was
right.
part of that because of your? I mean, you guys have built this before, right? Your reputation with
I
all
have
things
no
Steve.
idea. I thought it was a
It's
name.
because we were a startup, but we were 12 years old, and we had always been profitable. And maybe because we weren't asking for enough money, I don't know, but in the range of money we were looking for when we went and did this little road show. And we were very selective about who we went to see among the over-the-transom offers we had. It was much less hard than I thought it was going to be.
That's amazing.
But we didn't raise that much money, so.
But we weren't raising
Well, so did you have to present the business plan, I guess?
Oh, yeah, we did a business
how-
plan. We
how
did a
you're gonna-
business plan. Oh,
You're
yes,
going
we
to take
did.
over the
Yes,
world.
we
We
did.
did PowerPoints.
So what
we had a
is
little
the
deck, yeah.
in this era where advertising is doing all sorts of things, and there's now native advertising, and
Yeah.
you have an events business. What is the business model for
Well,
Recode that's going to?
It's subscriptions from the events, because that's a subscription. You know, people pay you a fee to go to something, so it's not an ongoing subscription. They just sign up, kind of. We've done that.
The events are the biggest.
The events are the biggest amount of money, but I think, and then we have advertising. We do some native advertising. We've tried that. But it's primarily advertising and subscription fees and sponsorships, bigger, larger sponsorships for the events. And I think one of the things that journalists do, which is somewhat irritating, is they try to separate the businesses. If we didn't have the year-long site, I don't think we'd get the speakers we have to, and I think it wouldn't be quite as vibrant a situation. They're very interlocked, and then we take all the interviews we do at the conference, we take them and we put them on our website, we cut up the video, now we're going to put them in podcasts. So we consider the whole thing one rolling bunch of journalism. And I think that people like to say, oh, you make money on the, on the conferences, but not this website. It's like, well, you can't, it's kind of you're
It's
doofus of
interesting
business.
where the conference is almost marketing for the website, and the website
No,
is
they're
almost
not.
marketing
No,
for
we
the
do
conference.
use.
It's
in
not.
terms of
That's
sort of
the way a lot of
attracting.
other people do it. To us, honest to God, it's all journalism.
Yeah.
It's all different ways to do journalism.
And then carrying that concept out. I mean, I did an interview with Barack Obama and then Hillary Clinton recently. We put them in the red chair. I mean, we put him in the red chair. She would, not her, but because we weren't able to carry that.
And I just did one in Beijing where we had the red chairs shipped over there.
Yeah.
What you guys know what we mean by the red chairs? Have you ever seen a photo?
We
of
have
them?
this red chair.
Okay, so he doesn't know. So
Right.
at our conference, it has become our kind of symbol. There's a company, a well-known office furniture company called Steelcase, which became a supporter of our sponsor, actually, of ours, very early on, I think starting with our second conference, our first conference, but in the second conference, they give us these very plush red chairs to do the interviews in, and we kept them, and we did it when we did a conference here in New York or a conference in Hong Kong, wherever. So that's now.
They look like Star Trek chairs, really.
We have a little, yeah, it's like the main chair in the Star Trek bridge.
Yeah.
So on the content marketing subject, so this is something that's on my mind a lot because that's the industry that my company has fallen into. It's for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially brands are publishing their own publications or they're partnering with companies like yours to do sponsored content.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all sorts of forms, and it's a little bit of a Wild West situation.
Yes, it is.
How do you feel about this movement? What's your take
so
on it?
We tried one. Walt wrote a fantastic essay on this issue.
It wasn't an essay, it was just a little, here's what we did. We decided, we discussed it, and we decided how does this square with our ethics, and we decided it's an ad. It's just like an advertorial that you guys, even I in the class of 70 will remember seeing in print magazines years ago. We decided our reporters would never be allowed to write them, and that we would never present them in a way that would confuse the readers into thinking they were our editorial coverage. So we had a discussion with our sales folks and our business folks, all of whom work for us, and we decided, that we were going to run them in a different color border with a different color tagline and a statement at the top that says this is an ad, and the logo of the company next to the byline of the freelancer or internal person or whoever they got to write it. And on top of all that we were not going to just slip them in, and this is what Kara's referring to, I wrote a post saying, a news article for our readers that just said, we're about to start this is our philosophy, this is how you can tell that this isn't a news article. If you have some better ideas or some complaints, please let us know. And so we were very upfront, put that post up, and we, I don't think...
How did it go?
Well, yeah, it did really
well. We're selling some. I think we have two big...
We're trying now those other...
We have two big
We're trying programmatic
campaigns coming up.
It's really tough to make money in advertising on the web. It just is. But by the way, no one's reading. Everything is... I think we're at I forget what number we're at mobile, but it's rising rather quickly. And so, once you've figured out the web, it's done. I mean, the web is done, really, for content for the most part. It's mobile first on everything. And so it's really challenging to do an advertising business on the web and on mobile right now. So everyone is, I'm thankful we do have the events business, because that's what makes money and stuff. So, but we'll eventually figure it out. It's just going to be, it's difficult for everybody. There's all kinds of, Facebook is saying, put your content on Facebook, and then you don't have any costs, and then we'll sell the ads for you.
Yeah, how do you feel about, that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask.
On Facebook.
Is that a trap?
Yes, it's like AOL did that many years ago with a lot of content partners. You remember how that ended up? They turned around and started charging them.
Do you think it'll work with Facebook?
I think it's good.
At first, it probably will work.
They'll have the nice party, they'll bring their partners in, they'll pet them, and then 2 years later, they'll charge them.
But there is a broader, not specifically the Facebook one, BuzzFeed, which couldn't be more different than we feel we are. And by the way, I want to say that those of you who read it, they do some very brave, expensive journalism mixed in with all the listicles and stuff that really makes them money. But they've said, including at some of our conferences, they really don't care where their stuff runs now. And the truth is, I don't know how many of you here run content, journalism, news, websites of some kind, you find that compared to even 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago, the percentage of your readers who are going to your homepage to find an article has just plummeted.
Ours is 10%.
Dramatically. They're all coming in sideways from a tweet or a Facebook post or a Snapchat thing or somewhere else. They're coming in where there's a link been posted. So your goal is to try to get them to hang around and read a second article or a third article. But they may or may not. They may move on.
For the most part, the front page is dead. It just is. Let's be clear.
And yet we all still try to make it look nice.
Obsess on it. And one of the things that's interesting is, say, the stuff that Snapchat is doing with the Discover feature. That's pretty cool, the way, I have a 13-year-old, and he said some piece of news the other day. I'm like, he does not watch the news, He's not like, and he goes, oh, da, da, and I go, where did you find that? And he goes, the Daily Mail on Snapchat. And I'm like, first of all, let's discuss the Daily Mail with you. Like, you will not be reading the Daily Mail because it sucks. But he watches Vice on there. He watches he goes to the Discover feature, and then he samples it, and then actually ends up reading and watching a lot of it. So that was that to me is a super interesting thing that's going on. I wish I don't know what we could do on there, but something like that is a really interesting way to get traffic to your sites.
I just think you have to be careful. And on your Facebook question, and we both know Mark and Cheryl, and I'm not trying to say they're bad people, but they just have a certain business model, and they're very famous for changing their rules and policies quite often. And so you would be taking a risk if you built up got people used to the habit of finding you there.
Ask Mark Pincus at Zynga.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
And ask Richard Rosenblatt for Google. I mean, Google just changed their algorithms to focus on mobile first, which they're absolutely correct to do, but everyone who doesn't have a mobile-enabled website or a mobile-happy website is kind of screwed.
So this is the question I've been the most nervous to ask,
if
you're ready for it. In the sort of the content, brand, native, whatever, and part of this is fueled by mobile because it's easier to look at a story than an ad on mobile. One of the questions we get asked a lot by journalists who are considering doing this, or maybe they've been laid off or they're trying to find work, is can I go back to the real world after I've done this, or will I somehow, how will my ethics be sort of damaged by this? And you may be surprised or horrified to know that the analogy I have used in the past is if Kara Swisher can be married to a Google exec and still be trusted and have credibility, then it is possible.
No, excuse me, I'm going to question on that one. Why do you read our ethical disclosure? Did you read it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, what does it say?
Well, currently you're
That's
separate.
no, before that.
What did it say?
What did it say? It says we've completely separated our finances. I've never owned a share of Google stock. All her money goes to our children. We never talk about talk about the jobs. It's very clear.
And Kara stayed away from most coverage of Google, and whenever she happened to have to get into Google or mention it, we ran at the top of the story a statement to that effect and a link to the ethics.
So
I think that's the point, right? That
no, but it's not. But you're telling people, you're doing questionable ethical things. But if Kara married a Google executive, that's really not comparable in any way whatsoever.
Well, so I was going to ask, how do you feel about the analogy?
Yeah, are you trying to say that you're being asked this by people who are being paid to write sponsored content by companies that are essentially ads?
So
and
right,
can they go back?
Right. Can they? Is there a level of disclosure that they can have that will allow people to not be confused?
Let me take that for a minute. First of all, it's completely
Different.
not analogous to her situation, because she never wrote an ad in her life, and never would. And secondly, I'm not sure you can go back if you make your career as a paid writer. You know, obviously, we all, in some ways, make some money from advertising. Everybody who's been employed at a TV network or a magazine or a newspaper, even if there had never been the invention of the internet, would have. I drew a lot of paychecks at the Wall Street Journal, which essentially came indirectly from advertising. But there is a difference between that and writing advertorials. A native ad is just an advertorial on the web. That's all it is. And sometimes they actually
and it should be called that, actually.
Outside experts, or you know, it depends who they get to write it. But if you want to, if you've done that not once or twice, but for really a long time, and then you say, okay, now I want to be hired by Recode or you know, the Washington Post or whoever it is, or to write news stories, I think you do take a hit to your reputation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, that's where BuzzFeed just got into trouble. The person who was involved in those articles was writing the advertising before and then moved over to the editorial side.
And didn't.
Right. Well, you guys have these amazing disclosures, right? I think
Yes.
the point that I try to make is that you have these amazing disclosures where you'll say what you own stock in or don't and who your relationships are with, and that's part of what makes how you have, both of you, a reputation, right? That,
well, the reason we have the disclosure is because we think readers are smart, like that they can get the distinction. Everybody has potential conflicts of interest everywhere in their life. And so our whole thing is, let's tell you everything and then let you decide, because we think you're smart. Most reporters think readers are stupid. They really do. They really don't want to, they don't want to listen to them. They don't want to hear from them. We are on social media. That's another thing. Our group is very heavily social media since the beginning. We like it. We like interacting with readers. We like hearing from readers. We like feedback from readers. I'm always on Twitter talking to readers.
I believe you called somebody culturally ignorant
today. Vivek Wadhwa.
Thank you.
I'd like to call him other names. I was having lunch with Kim Kardashian, and he's like, oh, you must be either old or enamored, which was insulting in some weird friggin' way that I didn't get. And he goes, I think you're either old or enamored or something. And I said, I think you're a cultural snob.
But back to your question, because I have there's an important distinction here. There's so many sites on the web, you can never say anything definitively. In my personal experience, I've never seen a website other than Recode, where every single story has a link to each individual reporter's ethics statement right next to the byline. I mean, somebody here has seen another website that does that. Please let me know.
And also with our,
but I think we're the only ones that do that, and everyone who writes for us, and all of our editors, all of our journalists have to have an ethics statement. That's number one. But the important thing to note here is disclosure isn't enough. We also have policies. So for instance, you can't, if you're the Apple reporter, you can't have Apple stock. You're not allowed to have any Apple stock. I'm not saying we invented that, other people invented that before us. But on the web, there are lots of people we compete with that don't have those kind of policies. So we have both. We have both tough ethics policy. You can't take a dime from Apple. You can't take, obviously, free products. You can't take discounted products. You can't, run this game that a lot of product reporters and reviewers run, where they borrow the phone, the iPhone, let's say, or the Samsung phone, and they review it, and then they say to the company, well, I want to buy this phone, which is fine. Our people buy them too. We make our people wait in line or wait whatever it is, pay the full price.
Walt made me wait in line for something. I was like, can't you use your Waltness for just this one time? It was like out the door. He's like, no, you're going to sit in line like everybody else.
A lot of other people will jump the line or will allow the company to say, well, now it's a used device, so you get it for 30% less. We don't do any of those things. So that's all in addition to disclosure. So we have both.
They're basic guidelines that the Journal
ethics
and the New
rules,
York Times has.
Which the Times and the Journal and other places have. And on top of that, what they don't have is this personal ethics statement that everyone
So did BuzzFeed screw up, in your opinion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they think they
I think
do.
they'll
They had a great, I'd urge you to read the interview on Gawker.
It's a little hard to read.
It's a little hard to read,
It's-
but it still was a good interview. I had dinner actually with Nick Denton last night, and he was telling me about them doing that. But yes, of course they did. And they can't have another one, I'll tell you that. I mean, that's the thing. What'll happen if there's another one happens? So they sort of used up all they can't have another one.
Well, and that speaks to in this
We're
era
having
where,
them at our conference. We'll be talking about that with them.
Nice. Well, in this era where there are so many options, right, and everyone is a publisher, and you're competing against all of these tech sites and on the tech front with BuzzFeed, right? For example, the credibility and your brand is really important. And this is something that's happened with you. You left the journal and you took your audience with you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an era of the journalist as brand.
Yeah.
When did that become a thing? And how does that change, knowing that you too are brands that people follow, how does that change the way you operate as journalists?
Do you think that's new? Nellie Bly, all those,
Yeah,
even
Mike
like-
Royko.
Yeah, I don't think it's new at
You know,
all.
sports columnists. Every city had a political columnist. These journalists were brands. They just were being not paid for being brands
Yeah.
by the publishers. They were being paid whatever the guild payment, contract said. They weren't allowed to exercise the benefits of being a brand, and there wasn't the internet, which allows you to move out of the traditional news organization should you choose. It's fine if you don't want to, but if you want to, you can move out of it and build on your being a brand. That's the only, but being a brand is completely not new. It goes way
The
back,
only
even
benefit-
way back.
The only benefit is when we go to South by Southwest and Walt and I are together, people go crazy like we're Brangelina. They're like, oh my
Nice.
God, it's you too. And we're like,
If
really
you go
gotta-"
to CES or South by Southwest,
CES,
if you
forget
walk down the street here, one person might recognize you in a week, but it's not
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, South by Southwest, it's CES, literally, we're so famous. But one time we were in a Starbucks and down here in Manhattan, and we were getting Walt drinks this ridiculous Starbucks concoction that he likes. But we were waiting there, and a group of Indian programmers, like 10 of them, were in the Starbucks, and they were like, Walt and Kara, and it was like so weird. It was like, they're like, and they
It's
took
amazing.
selfies with all of us, with tail selfies, and can we send them back to India? And I think Walt and I should go to India and Hyderabad and see what happens there. But it was really funny. That's the only time it's happened. And I'm going to tell one more. We were in, Walt's demo is like a white dude. It just is. Like it was for like a white dude of a certain age. And you know what I mean? Like they love Walt. They love Walt. Like, whoa, it's Walt Mossberg. And so we were in this restaurant, and I forget who we were with, Ed, the guy from Time Warner. And this incredibly young woman, gorgeous African-American woman, came up to him, and she was like, it's Walt, I can't believe I've seen you. And I thought he paid her, like, because I always joked that it's always the same white guy who comes up to Walt and like slathers all over him. And I thought he had given her money to come up to him. But she loved him and was a huge fan, and so he has fans.
So that
all
was
over
my
the place.
favorite moment. But,
Yes.
but the point is, journalists have been brands for a long time, and a lot of them went here, and some maybe didn't and still became successful. But the point is, they've been brands for a long time, but they just haven't been able to act as brands. Publishers have typically, and there have been some great publishers and a lot of terrible publishers, but publishers and broadcast station owners and magazine owners have tended to look at their journalists, or hope to be able to look at their journalists as fungible. You know, okay, I might lose you because you're getting a little big for your britches, and you know you want more money and I don't want to pay, but I'll hire her, and she can just do the job exactly like you did, and we'll be fine. And I think that was the rule. They didn't want to create stars for a long, long time, and that has changed.
And we want to do that. I mean, there is some like.
We do that
level-
with our own staff.
Right.
We're trying to make stars
Yeah.
and brands out of the people that work for us, even though we know
We're gonna
that
lose
means
them.
there's a chance there's a likely chance we
Yeah.
will lose them eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that's important when you're thinking about that is we're super active on social media, like really active. And I think that we're well known as people too, because we put our personalities out there. We're genuine, and we're a little more transparent than your average reporter. And so we'll get in arguments with readers, which shocks them every time. Like if they.
You more than me.
Yes, I do. But I think we put ourselves out there, so we become sort of famous in that way. Or if something happens, we'll make a comment on it. Like I think a lot of young women look up to me. I'll write something very defensive of, you know, like I was just on a panel when they were talking about unconscious bias. which is this idea in Silicon Valley is you don't mean to be biased towards women or African Americans or Hispanics. It just happens. And so someone was like, well, it's unconscious bias. I said, that's just that's a typical Silicon Valley word for laziness and stupidity. And it went all over Twitter, which I think was correct. Or when Eric Schmidt man-interrupted Megan just recently at South. Do you know what a man-interrupting is? You do. So she's the CTO of America. She's on a little higher plane than he is at this moment in time, and she used to work for him. And he started answering her questions. Like, it was incredible to watch. And then so I said, oh, a perfect example of man-interrupting. Like, thank you, Eric, for being the man-interrupter we know you to be. And so so we have a personality that we put out too along, and our reporters are encouraged to do that too.
Well, I think a lot of the people that are here thinking about you've made transitions, both of you, in your careers and in the businesses that you've been running, the media companies you've been running, really. And I think a lot of people here are thinking about how personal brand now is more important than ever, right? And how you can harness that or build that. How you used to be able to be that fungible reporter if you wanted to. And now it's almost necessary to.
You have to be entrepreneurial. You can't. I don't think you can be in journalism anymore without being entrepreneurial. I think reporters are the most risk-averse people on the planet, and it's done. You can't just assume you're going to have this big daddy newspaper.
Well, let's be fair. Reporters do take risks, but
yes,
not
of course.
business risks.
Yes, no, but business.
They sometimes risk their lives to get stories. So
I'm talking about, like, you have to think about your career in a much different way in terms of business, and how you're going to conduct it. That's all.
Yeah. So if we have a microphone in the middle here for some questions, you can line up. The last question that I wanted to ask while we're waiting for people to line up is, what is the outcome? So you've raised money from non-VCs, but from some media partners. What are you imagining the future of Recode becomes? What's the outcome?
We'll see.
Don't know.
We're going to try. We were profitable for 12 years. We've hired a lot more people, so we've said we're not profitable this year. But we're figuring it out. We're trying to build a business. But we've had a pretty good record for all those years at All Things D. We handed over millions and millions of dollars in profit.
Our goal is to keep evolving Recode, keep it as a quality, hopefully enjoyable and informative thing to read, but one that changes and morphs and has this conference business, and do that in whatever way we can that makes financial sense.
Or we'll just decide we're a communications app and get valued $1 billion. That's my plan, or something. Like, some of these valuations are crazy.
Yeah.
But look at BuzzFeed. What's that? $1 billion valuation. Vox, Business Insider. They're all. I think Business Insider just raised $60 million. Something enormous.
But I would point out to the J School Development folks, who are lovely folks, that because we're startups, we don't have any money to give you.
Well, Walt does, but.
Please.
Let's go to our first question.
I actually don't have a question, but I will explain the logistics of this question portion. We have about 15 minutes here, and I will make up the end of the line. So if you see me at the end, please do not
rush
join
she moves
the line.
Faster.
Hi.
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 How are you, Walt?
Good, Alan.
I'm Alan
Alan, do
Dodds
you wanna
Frank
say
from the
who you
class
are?
of 70, and there are a bunch of us here because of Walt and our other honorees, and it's great to see you, Kara. And I wanted to ask you, too, if you would consider devoting more coverage or encouraging more coverage of what I consider to be the dark underside of the internet and digital commerce, and that is namely the end of fair pricing. Because what I see happening is all these internet companies use algorithms that are invisible to all the customers, and there is no longer an equitable posted price that remains stationary, and therefore the companies can and do in fact discriminate based on each customer's habits and location, etc.
That sounds like an interesting story.
I'm having dinner with our commerce reporter afterwards. I'll mention it.
So we'll bring that up. That's a good idea for a story. I would only point out that I know you know this, Alan, but airlines have been doing this for a long time, and so have other people. So, huh?
You must be mad all the time.
Okay,
Oh.
so that's the subhead. That's the subhead. The end of fair pricing. It pisses off Alan Frank Dodds. Alan Dodd-Franks.
Constantly Indignant would be a great memoir name for me. Anyway.
Constantly indignant, yeah.
How you doing? I covered Wall Street for many years, and now I'm covering tech for a major publication. And I've been
For which publication?
for a major publication,
Which one?
Fortune.
No.
And you know, there's
You can say
Why do you call it a
Fortune.
major publication?
Yeah,
I don't know.
What is it,
whatever,
major? What are you?
know.
Do you think it's major anymore? But I'm sorry.
No. Exactly.
I'm calling Alan Murray saying you were afraid
Oh,
to
yeah.
say the name. But
That's fine. All right. All right.
I like Sir Word.
But gone to South by Southwest this year, gone to CES and what have you, and I've never met a group of journalists that are tech journalists that are so captured by the industry.
Yeah.
Versus Wall. You know, I've covered Wall Street, okay, and you know how that is. So how exactly can I or a tech reporter, you know, truly do the right kind of content, the hard-hitting content?
Well, can I ask
Can I ask just one question?
Yeah.
You guys did a bang-up job on mortgage-based securities and that stuff. That was great. You didn't. It happened the whole time.
yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing your point of view that there are a lot of
But there
tech
are.
reporters who are kind of fanboys and girls and that are captured.
Mostly fanboys.
But I do dispute that Wall Street journalists are any better. I subscribe to what my friend just said.
They are insular. They're super
But let me
insular.
ask you something, because when you say tech journalist, that encompasses a whole bunch of things. Is your job to be a beat reporter covering a particular group of companies or type of companies or type
I write
of,
commentary on a variety of issues.
but, or is your job to be a product reporter or product reviewer? Those are all different things.
No, not
Yeah.
product reporter. No.
Okay, so you know, she's a terrific reporter. I think I was a pretty good reporter in the 20 years I was a beat reporter. I don't think you handle it any differently. I mean, you get your sources that they don't want you to have. It's really just no different than covering the government or other kinds of companies. If you're interested in stories about Google that your readers should know whether Google wants them to or not, you do the normal things they teach here every day. You know, you go develop your sources and you go at it.
No,
I
I get
think
it.
you- I think
but
you have
it's
a
like,
problem.
you know, but like at Goldman Sachs, if I disparage them about their earnings, like they're mad with me for a week. But if I do something against Google or
Yeah.
Facebook, they shut me down for like
Well, just
a month
get a
or
thicker
two.
skin.
Just get
you
it.
know? And so-
Yeah, Marissa Mayer has shut me out for years.
She hates me. Yeah.
She hates me more. Trust me.
Probably.
Let me
Nobody,
just- no,
she hates nobody as much as Swisher. And
But
she's
let me
even
just say,
begun to hate me.
we've
'cause-
broken tons and tons of stories. I wrote a story last week saying, here's what's going to happen to their earnings this week. I didn't talk to anyone at Yahoo, I mean, officially at Yahoo. Let me just say, you don't have to
Okay.
get their cooperation. I think you're mixing up the fanboys, and there are not that many fangirls. It's mostly boys. And they are, let me just say, boys. It's like younger than my children.
Google Glass and
in
everything.
mentality. There is a Peter Pan mentality in Silicon Valley that's really repugnant to me, but that's what it is. And it's sort of, there is a little bit of a gee whiz. That's a different kind of coverage because they're writing for the gee whiz audience. Like, you know, the Apple phone has a new green button. Like,
Yeah.
everybody go crazy. It's not news. Like, so one of the things we're trying to do is stop doing that. We're like, even with us, we've been covering fundings. Like, this person got a funding. This person, we've stopped. We put them into it. We're like, you know, we're not adding anything to it. It's not actually news. And the analogy I use is a lot of it's commodity news. Like, this happened, but it's not. It's like the weather was sunny the
So
other
we
day.
round them up on the weekends. Now, in terms of people being mad at you,
Too bad.
you're not wrong that their tactic is often to try to freeze you out as much as they can. But I hope that somebody here or wherever you went to journalism school or wherever your mentor was in journalism explained to you that the best thing to do when you get frozen out is still find stories to write. And so after a while, it becomes in their interest to talk to you as opposed to not talk to you.
They will eventually.
I mean,
Marissa's still
right
holding
now,
on.
Microsoft is mad at us because they
Yeah,
didn't
they're
like
mad
the
at us.
interview the two of us did with their new CEO last May. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
they haven't exactly totally froze us out, but they're mad. The head of Intel wouldn't talk to me for, what, a
Yeah.
year?
Carly Fiorina hates me. I mean,
Carly
you know,
Fiorina hates
stop us
her.
from covering
Steve
Apple.
Ballmer,
She hates everybody.
you know, hated me. I've personally been, and I'm not, this is not a euphemism, I've personally been yelled at multiple times. I have the honor of having been yelled at by both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. So, you know, it happens.
Thanks.
But yeah, they are. Don't go to CES. That's like a weird.
Yeah, it's a
freaking
waste of
place.
time.
Waste of time for a
I'm down
business
to,
report.
I'm down to a slightly less than 48 hours at CES.
What about South by Southwest?
That's just fun. I just
But
like
it's
the
also,
barbecue.
I think
like
it's
the
also
barbecue.
less,
Just like drinking.
you can use it for source development,
Yeah.
then it's interesting.
Cool young companies. There's a lot of cool young companies.
Yeah.
They're there, the people are there, and they're drunk. That's
But
why.
there's also a lot of just marketing there now.
Yeah,
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
but
Kara.
no problem.
Hi, I'm Kavitha Menon, class of 95, and I work at the Committee to Protect Journalists. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, I don't know how aggressively Recode is covering the involvement of tech companies in surveillance, and
Not
what
enough.
you think are some of the kind of the most important issues affecting the industry and affecting society that really haven't captured wider
Well, that one.
public interest.
That one's a critic, not just the government surveilling us, but Google surveilling us, Facebook surveilling us, and that kind of stuff. I don't think that's covered nearly enough. We did a lot on the Sony hack and hacking and things like that. In fact, we were the first site to write that it was North Korea, which was questioned in the New York Times. Like, they're probably wrong about this. But we do not have an adequate cybersecurity. Eric Hesseldahl is doing a great job, but it's really hard to find journalists that really know about this stuff. That's one thing. The second thing is it's also a governmental, they're governmental reporters who cover the CIA and the NSA and stuff like that. So I think if you were going into anything, that would be I would hire a great reporter in that.
We have agreed on this.
Yeah.
You know, this may not be a great excuse, but we're 15 months old. We're fairly small. We have one tech policy reporter in DC who has to cover a little bit of that and everything else, like the Comcast
Net
Time Warner
neutrality.
merger being shut down by the FCC. And then we have Eric Hesseldahl here in New York, who's a very good, who's a good cybersecurity reporter, but he's our only enterprise reporter, enterprise tech. So he has a lot of things to cover. So to the extent we get more headcount,
That'll be our next hire.
that'll
100%.
probably be our next hire.
100%. It's really important, and especially someone who does understand what these companies are doing. You know, when you're on your website, you go from website to website to website, and Google, say, follows you on the websites, but they don't really know what you do. But this thing, they know where you go, they know that you called an Uber, they know that you made a phone call, and then you bought something at the store now with the Apple Pay and stuff. They have so much information about your movements and what your preferences and everything else that it's astonishing. And I don't think consumers really understand how this is a surveillance device that you will willingly agree
The
to have
only
yourself
thing I
surveilled.
would say that we have covered, and we're hardly the only people that have covered this, is Tim Cook's public fight with the government. I mean, the
Yeah.
phone Kara is waving at you is actually encrypted to the extent, as you know, that even if somebody with a search warrant came to Apple and said, give us everything on Kara's phone, Apple would be able to say, we don't know how to decrypt it.
And I asked the president about that. That's
Key.
the one place he got all testy because he's changed his opinion about civil liberties a little bit. I imagine he would, seeing all the intelligence. But he was like, I haven't changed a bit, and I'm like, wow, you really have. Like it was a very testy exchange.
But if you're Cook, because we've also pointed this out, if you're Apple, you make your money selling the devices, not make money by advertising. They have a little advertising, but they don't make much or anything really from it.
And it hurts their good friends Google. that have
So,
those policies.
yeah, but if your main competitor is Google, whose entire business is collecting a bunch of data about people, you're happy to say, we don't know what you bought on Apple Pay, your phone's encrypted, 16 other things, because it's competitively to their advantage. It also, however, does put him at considerable odds. I mean, he's been attacked by the head of the FBI, by Obama, by other people. So it's an interesting
But
story.
I'll tell you one area we think is interesting is the diversity issues. We've been very aggressive. We covered the Ellen Pao trial quite heavily. That's an area we're going to write a lot about, the lack of diversity in Silicon Valley
Yeah.
and tech in general.
Hi. One of the things that concerns me is where do you find coverage of larger social issues that of the world we live in? For example, I ran into somebody who's worked in tech and said, I used to love it in the old days when you could actually call somebody up. And I said, well, I have that experience. I can't call anybody up even if I have a problem, or very few people. And you get do not reply emails. I mean, the way the average person is beginning to more and more experience.
You talking about customer service or
Not
just
whatever.
calling anyone?
I'm
I
talking
don't
about,
know, we do.
the other issue is compatibility. I see companies eager to release the next issue.
Well, let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, covering broader social issues, we run a tech and media website.
As it
She
relates
just
to-
finished saying
Yeah.
both Kara and I personally, and I think most of our staff, cares very much about these broader social issues. So where we can practically add to the coverage of them in a quality way, we're determined to do it. But it's still a tech and media website, so it's not going to be...
We'll write about the impact of being online too much. We'll write about...
Right. The tech aspect of it, that's number one. Number two, I personally don't find it hard to make phone calls and call sources and call colleagues. I mean, yes, we do a lot of things. It's not email so much anymore, by the way. It's texting and messaging and other things. We run our whole company, by the way, on an internal social network.
2 of them.
Now have 2 of them, and she and I still talk every day or two about some things that we take offline, and she talks to sources, and I talk to sources, and you know, it's less than maybe it was 15, 20 years ago, because there are alternatives to voice calls, but it's not gone. I don't think it's gone. And I forgot what your last point was, but I'm sorry, I'm getting all these.
Yeah, it was the compatibility question.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
remember
actually
that
think...
I bought a piece of equipment, and I could not install it.
Well, what was it? What did you buy?
It was an HP printer, and a couple of years ago...
What couldn't you use with your HP printer? I'm not going to diagnose it.
No, I'm just going to say, I couldn't install it, so I called the company. At that time, I could reach them, and they said, throw out the disks, download the new ones. And I'm thinking, if the major companies in our society can't collaborate a little bit and agree on certain standards, and it's only about releasing the next one.
You'll be happy to know that there are standards now. Yeah. Most printing is wireless, and I can print on my HP printer from Windows, Mac, Android, iOS.
Yeah, I know.
I can print from this phone anywhere in my house, and it's not because I'm
also restarting.
And by the way, I've done nothing.
I'm going to stop this printer clinic right now, okay? All right, thank you.
I've done nothing.
Sorry, you're going to...
It's not that question.
There are
All
standards.
right, and no printer questions. Change your ink right now. No problem.
Hi, Walt. As Walt knows, I edit a magazine called Broadband Communities now. It's my retirement job after being a professor here. And basically, our readers make all these products possible because they build the networks. And what set me off was, well, it's becoming more mobile. So yes, it is. And you know, we have a mobile-ready website. We have a website. We have all the social media stuff. But the amazing thing is we make far more money per subscriber from the print magazine. And that amount of money we make is actually growing. And what the advertisers say, by the way, it comes out to about $60 per subscriber per year. It only costs us $20 per subscriber a year, the marginal cost on top of everything else we do to put it out. And we're actually increasing our print runs and increasing our number of issues again. We had been 12, dropped down to 6, now we're up to 7. And the reason is the advertisers are willing to pay a very big premium because it's a quality product that people keep on their desks for quite a while, the executives and all that sort of thing. And I'd rather not be in the print production business. We don't want it either. But it's clearly part of the mix, along with our databases and our studies and
well, you've just
our
uncovered
consulting and all that
Recode's
sort of thing.
secret plan.
Secret plan, sorry. But you know,
Yeah.
it's great that you're making money from print. We're not against print. If we could figure out a way to make money, we would do it. But the fact of the matter is the secular shift is these devices. Sorry to tell you, this is it. This is where it's going.
Well, what my question is it for everyone? I mean,
Meaning, is it... you
Steve,
can have
nothing's
print.
for every. There's an
No.
80-20 rule about everything,
no,
right?
no. But my point is a secular shift. We find that people use mobile devices to get at our databases, to get at our financial models and so on and so on, much more than the web, much more than the print magazine. That's now about 25% of our business, is just those things, you know, being an information hub for the business. But we do a lot of long-form commentary that people seem to like. And I mean, I would rather not be in the print production business anymore. At my age.
And you're not going to be.
It's a pain in the neck. But the articles that we do are, quite frankly, they're difficult to do on a small screen. I live with it, but I don't find it comfortable.
I would argue, just watch how young people use these things. Just go out and watch them.
We have.
Yeah, but they do read long form. Look at what Medium's doing. I just was judging something the other day, very long article on Medium that was fantastic. It was like, took me 6 years to read. It was really great. But I mean, look at these devices right here. I mean, these are very big, and they, you know, they'll be different.
I have a gag. I like my wife's screen is even bigger.
You're going to have like a Harry Potter-like newspaper that's going to come alive and shift and move for you. We've seen them, versions of those.
Why would you talk about our secret project?
Okay, I'm sorry. So it's just, I think you have to really just assume.
I mean, really, seriously.
Young people just
Mark
don't read
Zuckerberg
print.
pops right out of your screen.
Right, yeah, and he's going to
hologram.
Yeah.
Well, if he pops
grabs
out of my
your
screen,
wallet.
that would be a reason to go print. But
Steals your data, grabs your wallet, and goes home.
Right.
But I mean, you just have to look. It's not about us. It really. Let's be honest. I mean, if you're older than 4 years old, you're really digitally
Might be about
dead.
him.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing,
getting
Kara.
old,
Is you're absolutely right. We keep expecting it. The problem is that our print revenue is growing massively again.
I don't
the last
think
3 or
that's-
4 years. It drives
That's
you
because
crazy.
everybody's not dead yet, but they will be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, I think you just have to think about it. I mean, I have a 10-year-old, and they do not watch linear television in any way whatsoever, and they don't even watch. They just use it as a screen. But what's interesting about it is that that Hollywood continues to try to do things that they aren't like, and they just don't do it. And I think that once we have this fully digital generation, they will say what they want, and it doesn't, as long as there's great content, that's what we believe, and that's our greatest business thing. We make great content that's ethical, fair, interesting, newsy,
Funny sometimes.
occasionally, unintentionally a lot of the time, and then we put that out there in whatever form we can, and we believe in that. That's our most, we don't know about the platform. We don't know if it's going to be Facebook.
So it's kind of, in a
Snapchat.
funny way, I know we're about to get some, what's it called, an Innovator Award? But that's really old-fashioned, what you just said, and it's true.
So when the Oculus Rift comes out, if that's the platform, you'll
we'll
do the
have
same.
that.
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
so,
Believe me. I mean,
Yeah.
if
Who's going to live in Oculus first?
we will
Mossberg, hello.
We'll find some money.
Put up your Apple Watch to show the people.
Oh, this is an Apple Watch.
Is that an audible groan from the audience if we didn't get
But
that
we
on
don't
camera?
we don't yet have an Apple Watch app.
What? How does Mossberg have it on his wrist then? Oh, come on, people.
We could talk
It's Walt
so much
Mossberg.
about the Apple Watch. I know this. But I would like to turn it
He's
over to
reviewing.
Fiona Kirk, who is the president of our Journalism School Alumni Board.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending this year's Alumni Weekend. It's great to have you all back on campus. Tonight, I have the pleasure of presenting the 2015 Innovator Award, which was created in 2011 to recognize J-School graduates who inspire, create, develop, and implement new ideas that further the cause of journalism. Last year's recipient was Shane Snow, so it's very fitting that he hosted this conversation with Kara and Walt. And it's very obvious, I think, from this past hour why they are the winners of this year's award. So we're going to cut right to the chase. Down here. And I am very proud to present them each with their very own Innovator Award from the Columbia Journalism School.
Thank God it's a plaque and not a crystal thing. This is great. We really appreciate it. When I was here at journalism school, I actually didn't want to be here. It was funny. But it's really nice to come back to Columbia. It's a really wonderful school. I learned a lot here. And one of the things that was nice is that I was able to work with an alumni, Walt Mossberg. So I just want to say, if it wasn't for Walt, I wouldn't be here. He'd be
If
here
it wasn't for Kara,
no,
I
you'd
wouldn't
be here. You'd be there.
There you
You'd
go.
be just fine. But anyway, we appreciate this.
Thank you. It's very nice. We've gotten a number of, been lucky enough to get a number of awards here and there, but it's nice to get one from the Columbia Journalism School, so that's terrific.
That's very well
Thanks.
deserved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walt and Kara. So just quickly, just so you know, there are books on sale on the first floor at the Stabile Center, including Shane Snow's book. I was told to plug it. So feel free to go down there and check it out. The next event will be the Hearst Lecture with Kevin Delaney and Lydia Polgreen in the same room starting at 6 p.m. Thank you, everybody.